Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go, man. Hunt the ball. Let's go, family on 3. 1, 2, 3, family.
Hello, football family. Welcome into Huddle It Up Films NFL Draft Barbecue. That's big board questions. And today, very special guest. She has been on the program before. This is time number 2. And that is the NFL chick, aka Reeta. Reeta, how are you doing? Now, this first question I always ask is about people and what they've been doing with their work and their careers, their football stuff. But I have to admit, out of all the guys, so far you're the first lady to come on. All the guys that Hey, shout out to the ladies.
I fit right in because I got a haircut like a guy.
Oh, mercy.
So I'm sticking with the tradition.
You're a lady to me, okay? I got my crushes out there. I got my crushes. Now I'm a happily married man, so we're going to keep this in perspective. But when Reeta comes on the show, I even told my wife, I'm like, I should probably get a haircut or something. Like, I got the good sweat.
Like mine.
I got the good. Yeah, I do. You know what? I used to do that once a year. It was good. Like in the springtime, it felt so free. You get all that air and stuff in there. You know what I mean?
Listen, why y'all didn't tell me this earlier? I wish I would have known.
Yeah,
but I'm here now, so
it's liberating, man. You feel the wind and everything, and that not getting stuff in your hair, in your ears, and your eyes, and all that stuff.
Absolutely.
But put on the good sweatshirt too. That is Steve Spagnuolo, is the double S.
Okay.
So Miss Spagnuolo or Mrs. Spagnuolo, when she was here, I delivered their mail, and when he went to the Giants back home, he only spent a year here. She had all this Ravens gear, so I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be saying this, but she gave me a sweatshirt. It was all she gave me.
Oh, that's cool.
But yeah, she appreciated my service and all. I was a friendly mailman, just kind of like I am here.
Really nice of her.
It was. So this is I want to tell people it's Steve Smith's because of the double S.
SS, right?
But it's Steve Spagnuolo, so we keep it real on the program here, Reeta.
So just say it's Steve's and allow people to just come up to their own conclusion.
Yes, see, that's probably the way to go. You know, this is a famous Raven, Steve. But you know what we bonded over in our short time together, Reeta, was our I'll just say dislike of Tom Brady. Because if you remember that Steve Spagnuolo was the Giants defensive coordinator when they had Strahan and JPP and the other guys, I'm not going to try to forget their names, but when they beat the Patriots in the Super Bowl, that was Steve Spagnuolo's defense.
Yep.
So she doesn't like him. There's actually some public comments out there you can Google if you'd like that Mrs. Spagnuolo made about Tom Brady. Yeah, so we got to talk about that. When I went home and looked it up, I was cracking up. I'm like,
That's hilarious.
she is my girl. I knew it. But yeah, a lot of guys came in and they're talking about all the stuff they're working on. But dare I say, Reeta, you're about to put them to shame when I ask you what's going on in your life. You have an exciting new opportunity. Can you please tell everybody about it?
Myself and Glenn Clark will be hosting a show on 105.7 The Fan starting April the 24th, which is a Sunday. So it will be Sundays from 1 to 4, at least through August. We'll be doing it. And then also I will be doing Tuesday nights with Jerry Coleman and 105.7 The Fan from 7 to 10. So we'll be talking baseball, sports, whatever else is going on. If you're an Orioles fan, it is very hard to have that conversation. It's very hard to have content in this town this time of year. So 105.7 asked me to join with Jerry one night a week so we can spice things up a little bit, since the Orioles have decided that once again they're going to be hard to watch. And
it is.
We need to find some stuff to talk about for 3 hours.
It is. So first of all, tell Mr. Coleman that he needs to spice his things up. Okay. Just some constructive criticism from someone I respect, but getting Reeta on the show was a good move for you, Jerry. So take advantage of that. And then second of all, this is a football show, but I'm going to give my thoughts because, of course, I'm a lifelong Baltimore kid right on the city-county line. I'm right close to the stadium, Reeta. So, man, our baseball team's minor league system has been ignored for so long, like literally, Reeta, our entire adult lives, because I know we're around the same generation.
Yeah.
When we were growing up, when we were kids, the Orioles had this farm system that was unstoppable, and it seemed like every year we had a new player come onto the scene and be like, oh wow, I'm excited to watch him next year. And there's always somebody new coming up. We haven't had that in quite some time. I mean, Trey Mancini is like the only prospect that I, as a casual fan that I've seen that's come up and burst on the scene. He came up with the Manny Machado, Chris Davis Orioles, and now he's the star. So it's painful. It's tough to watch bad baseball for me. If it's 5-0 in the fifth inning, my mind goes elsewhere. I just want competitive games. So
5-0 in the fifth, it's hard for me to turn it on.
Right.
And that's because I know that the product right now is not good. And you mentioned the farm system, and obviously the Orioles have the top farm system in Major League Baseball. But at what point do we start to see those guys coming to the major leagues and making the impact on the Orioles? And that's the part that I think we're all just anxious about and maybe a little frustrated with, and our patience is a little bit thin. So I've already accepted that this year is not going to be a good one, but I would, starting next year, I'd really like to see competitive baseball. Competitive. I'm not saying that, you got to make the playoffs next year, but another 90 plus loss season is not going to work for me.
We're on the same page. We're on the same page. I just want to see good baseball. I'm not expecting them to be the World Series or playoffs or wild card contention next year. Just give me some watchable baseball. And last note on baseball before we switch over to the barbecue. To me, it's all about pitching. Like, I think we have enough good young positional players, but if you don't have pitching, it's, especially in the AL East, you're in big trouble. So when I'm going to start, personally for me, when I start getting a little pumped up and more interested, it's going to be when these pitchers start coming on the scene and do what we've seen from like Cedric Mullins and Austin Hayes and the other young good players that we have playing the field. But you need pitching, Reeta. Give me some good pitching prospects, man.
I agree. I mean, don't get me wrong. They also need consistent hitting. I think they've only scored 12 runs in 6 games. I'm sorry. So that's average 2 runs a game. That's not going to cut it.
That's not good, right? Yeah,
no.
Not good.
But if you had good pitching, you'd probably stay in some of these games. That would be a little bit close. So yeah, I agree with you. I'm like I said, this is the last year that I'm willing to say, okay, I understand that this is not going to be a good baseball team. But after next year and beyond, they got to start being competitive because, my patience is wearing very paper thin at this point.
Yes, Reeta. So very, very proud of you. And since I have you here, I congratulated you on Twitter and all, but it's good to see your face and be able to say it to you. But, now it's time to put you on the spot because you're on my YouTube channel. So I'm going to say you need some Huddle It Up films on this Sunday show. You know what I mean? Hey. When it comes to coveted guests, it doesn't get any more coveted than Mr. Jason at Huddle It Up Films. So, yeah, I'm just going to put the pressure on you. Put the pressure on you here on the channel.
I'm not mad at that at all. We'll make it work.
Most important question, though, this is what we've been doing. I hope you enjoy my barbecue. You have had a lot of good guests. Skeptic Goat was just here. It was good to get him in the building. Had Coach Evans, Dev. I don't even want to run through everybody's names because I'll forget somebody. But I've been asking everybody about their own personal vibe or anything they can tell me about themselves at a barbecue. So, you can go anywhere you want with it, whether you're hosting a barbecue, whether you're going to a barbecue. Do you have any special dishes that you make? Do you do any dancing? I saw you dance with a mascot one time, by the way. What is the NFL chick? What is Reeta's vibe, cookout strategy? Give it to me straight.
I'm probably going to make the deviled eggs at the cookout. I don't like to do a lot of work for the cookout because I'm really here just to be present and to eat. But if you need me to do something, I will make some deviled eggs. I will buy some water. And it's not that I can't cook. I just, like I said, it's not, look, I don't want to do it. I just want to be the patron. If you have music there and potentially a DJ, I'm probably the one that, if I've had enough adult beverages, I'm the one that's going to get on the microphone and start emceeing the event. So yeah, I'm the lady that makes the deviled eggs and the lady that is going to get on the microphone.
Okay.
Once it gets popping.
So for me, I'll bring you ice and some beer guy. That I can.
I'm gonna bring some alcohol too. Yeah, I'll bring some alcohol.
Yeah, so you said it's not that I can't cook, it's just that I want to relax. For me, I can't cook. So I have to rely, I've had to learn to rely on my ice bringing and drink bringing and just go to the store and get something that you can, doesn't need to be cooked because
Right.
I'm terrible. I said this earlier. I'm banned from the kitchen in our house, Rita. I tend to mess things up. I put things back incorrectly. I'm barely trusted to unload the dishwasher because I'll be putting stuff too high for her to reach is what I get. So, yeah. So I when I try to help around that particular area, kitchen area of the house, I end up doing more harm than good that I found. And, I didn't find it. She straight out tells me, of course, she doesn't hold her tongue. So,
right.
So
Hey,
yes.
that's what we're supposed to do, right? We're supposed to be able to just say that.
Hey, and I say tough stuff to her too, Rita. It works both ways.
Exactly.
Everybody needs to be checked, or you know what I mean. You rely on each other. That's what love's about. When she's taking a little too far, I kind of throw it in there respectfully, and vice versa. Although I think I'm more respectful than her. My feedback's more respectful. I think that's the natural order of things, Rita. So, man, we got a big draft coming up, and
yes.
I just want to. We've gone over a ton of players with a ton of people. So I just wanted to open it up in general to you. What are you looking at? Who are you thinking about? Any way you want to take this, Rita, go ahead and let me know what you're thinking.
This is a difficult draft for me. And I'm a person that watches college football. I probably watch it a little bit differently than you do. I am a fan of college football, big time. I'm a Florida Gator fan. Please hold your condolences. So I watch it from a different perspective than you would, right? Because I think you watch it from a perspective of talent and watching individual talent. And I watch it as a collective talent. So, while I do know a lot of the guys that are coming out in the draft, from an individual perspective, I am not as familiar potentially because I don't watch as much individual film as you guys. And that's why I respect what you guys do, because you put in the time and the effort to be able to create a profile for these players and then to say, this is how good I think that this player would, in terms of being drafted, would go and who they'd be a fit for. So kudos to you and your peers for putting in the hard work that people like myself are not going to do, because I just like to watch the games because I just enjoy college football. And in the midst of that, I find players that I watch because they're talented at their individual position. But for the most part, I watch it from a collective perspective and a fan perspective. So while
it's the beauty of football, Rita, I was just going to interrupt and say it's the beauty of football.
Because it is a team sport, right? So while I know a lot of players, this draft is different for me because there are not a lot of guys that I feel like stand out. There's a few players that, we all can, I think the consensus of all of us would be like, no, we really like this guy, right? Like the Sauce Gardners, the linebacker from Oregon, Thibodeau, and some other guys. But I think that like after we get to that part, everybody else, like to me, there's like not guys that really stand out. And even though there's guys that people want to tell us to stand out, right? Like the Pennings, when I've seen some things, I'm like, I'm not sold on the standout, but if it's because it's based on need, then I guess I understand.
I'm with you, Rita. I have him at the end of the green section, and I was just talking to Coach yesterday. The reason I did that, Rita, is because I want to keep some kind of consensus or integrity to my board. I don't want, like, if I had the stones to do it, I'd have them probably in the 40s, but I don't want my board to look. I don't want my board to look too crazy and have somebody look at it and be like, "Oh, this guy's a fool." I keep seeing him in the top 10. I'm gonna change the channel. So I'm not a Penning fan. Coach Evans actually thinks he'd be an elite guard, that he just don't have the feet.
Okay.
He don't have the quickness. But
Okay.
he said if you put him inside and let him, let his nastiness take over, and he can handle some of the bigger guys in this league. And that's the first thing. That's what I love about this program is, you get to talk to so many different people with different perspectives. And then the other thing, Rita, is when these prospects, something I would like to get your opinion on. I was expecting a lot of disagreements because, like you said, what you said is how I see it and how a lot of other people see it. There's very few superstars. The Thibodeaux is one thing. Sauce Gardner's, I like Aquanu a lot, the big guard from NC State. But once you get past this, like the beauty of this draft is there's a huge section of players that are going to be good starters, but that's about it. You know what I mean? They're not going to be superstars, but they're not going to be scrubs. There's a lot of like good players, good role players, that kind of thing. But what I was getting at is I was expecting a lot more disagreements. And with the draft, I'm not finding a lot of disagreements in the assessments. Okay, we all think he can do this. We all got questions about this. And it really struck out to me from a philosophical standpoint. What I wanted to ask you about is that the draft has a lot of art to it. It's got a lot of taste to it. It's got a lot of personal preference. Like we're all seeing the same things, but boiling that all down and putting them in some kind of order is damn near impossible. And that's why, no matter what kind of board you make, you're going to have players up at the top of your board or higher on the board that are still hanging around in the mid rounds.
Because everybody's board is different, right? And everybody's draft technique is different, right? We know that the Ravens, for the most part, have been a BPA, best player available type of franchise, whereas maybe, I don't know, I'm using the Cowboys as an example. I don't know how true this is. I'm just using a team. Could be, well, this is a big need for us, and this is a very high rated player, and I'm afraid to trade down because maybe he won't be there, so I'm just going to take him right now, right? So it's such it's a difficult thing to predict, because everybody's going into the draft, how everybody looks at the draft is different. What everybody need is different. And even though we can sit here and say this is a need, it's very possible that team doesn't draft that. Maybe that their team is not high on the guy that you think that you're high on. Just like you and I said, well, Penning is not somebody like, we consider him to be a high, prospect, but it's very, I have seen thus far, we're probably in the minority in that regard. He's, touted as one of the top, linemen in this draft. So it's just so interesting to me this time of year to see how, everybody's boards are, how different they can be, how similar they can be, because it really is just a guessing game. We can sit here all day and tell us who we think the top players are, which you've done with your board. Obviously, you've given me your top overall players. It doesn't mean that that's where they're going to go because everybody's need is different, but it's amazing. And that's the one thing that I love about the draft. It's so unpredictable. I wonder if anybody's ever won like any money, like picking the first round, like straight up.
It seems impossible.
I feel like it's impossible, right?
Even with the millions upon entrance or whatever. But it's like predicting the March Madness. There's always the 115 seed that messes you up. And then chances are if that person took the 15 seed, then the rest of their board's messed or something else. Like it seems impossible. Yeah. So I'm glad to hear that because I feel that a lot. Like I said, I was expecting more disagreements. And I'm like, the people I talk to, even on Penning, they're like, yeah, 14 seems too high. Like if we were going to target Penning, we should probably trade back and get two guys in that area. And if we miss out, we can trade back up later and get another tackle. Like I said, it's funny because the stylistic differences. And then one other thing I wanted to run by you, I'm sure you've noticed this, is that the need part, when you mentioned BPA for the Ravens, obviously that's a big part of their strategy. You want a good player. It's better to draft a good player at a non-need than it is okay player and reach for a need. But remember when the Ravens drafted Marlon Humphrey, corner wasn't necessarily a need for that year. I believe we had like Brandon Carr, some other, older cornerbacks on the team, Ladarius Webb maybe at that time. I'm not sure. My brain's messed up, but corner wasn't screaming out as a need. But the Ravens saw it as, man, we're getting Marlon Humphrey for 5 years. He's going to be a number one corner within that time. So you can't just look at what we need right now. A lot of that's going to be filled in towards training camp. You get a body which you miss out on in the draft. You want that great player, and that's kind of something that I agree with the Ravens. And I'll throw this out. Kevin Zeitler could very well be his last year in a Ravens uniform because of his contract and everything else. And something that us tape nerds have noticed is that right guard is becoming a more important position because of who's lined up against them. The team's best defensive lineman, they put it 3-tech, they put right across from that right guard. And if you don't have a right guard that can handle that guy one-on-one, all of a sudden you got to change everything else in the offense. So right guard, a sneaky need for this team, not for 2022, but for beyond that.
Beyond. Right. And I agree. And so if Penning is a guy that you feel like is a better guard, which, is still a need to me on this team, then, make go ahead and make it the pick. If you feel like that 14 is too high for him, don't take him, and so I am big on, I know we keep talking about we need pass rush, and we do. This team definitely needs an additional pass rush. But offensive line is so important, particularly the depth in that category. And so it would be interesting to see how the Ravens go in doing so and getting linemen, because there are a lot of good linemen in this draft. Again, I don't think that there's a lot of superstardom, but a lot of solid players that you can probably find on day 2 and beyond. So yeah, that's the fun part, right? Guessing to see what your favorite team is going to do, because you keep watching all these analysts and experts tell us where where your team is going to pick and who they're going to pick, and you just keep looking like
yeah. And I pay attention to that stuff a little bit because they got phone numbers that in their Rolodex that I don't have. So you kind of learn over the years, I think Peter Schrager's a good example of that, where he doesn't really dig into the prospects a lot, but he talks to people a lot. And that's how he gets his, okay, don't sleep on these guys. So when I see Penning in the top 10 of some of these drafts, that's why I said I can't fade him down my board too much, even though me particularly, I'm not a huge fan of him because of all the penalties he got. And Reeta, they're not just like bonehead penalties where he's just a little out of control and getting the personal fouls. They're holding penalties. So I can't say, oh, well, if we just get him under control, he's not going to be penalized because he's so mean. It's technical stuff too.
That's what I was going to say. It's a technique issue. And then in the game, what was it? Was it Senior Bowl or East West?
Senior Bowl.
Played, and he was getting manhandled. That wasn't a good look. That wasn't a good look for him. So if that's happening to you on a college level, what's going to happen when you're playing against the best of the best, the creme de la creme in the NFL? And that was worrisome to me. And I think I was already on the fence, but then I officially checked out there. I was like, yeah, I'm good. I'm good here on that wagon. I'm not joining that wagon. So, I just think that, you can find some good offensive linemen if Penning is not your guy in this draft. I think there's a lot of solid players in this draft. But they're going to be solid players. If somehow they work their way into to be standout players, phenomenal. But I just don't think that this is a draft of phenomenal players. It's just a draft of solid players, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? Particularly if it works out for your football team. I don't think it's anything wrong with that. So, you just got to be patient with it. And being at 14 is such a weird spot for the Ravens because it's like almost like the middle of the pack, and so you're not in the top 10. You don't have the top 10 players, but then you're not in the bottom either, right? And so it's a weird place to be and where to pick. And I think I asked on the timeline on Twitter, would you be willing to trade up for Thibodeau? And a lot of people was like, no, I wouldn't garner, some people that was like, yes, if you feel like he is going to give you the pass rush that you're looking for, absolutely. But for the most part, people was like, I'm not going to mortgage, future picks and this, that, and the third. And I think my question is this, Jason, like, when do you decide, when is it a good opportunity to trade up for a guy? If an organization is extremely high on a guy and they think that he's a generational player, why wouldn't you?
To me, I think this is the spot where you do it, because I think, well, I want to state, first of all, there's a good argument for trading up. There's a good argument for staying put and thinking that somebody's going to drop to you, because they always do. The quarterbacks will get taken, a wide receiver, yada, yada, yada. We'll have a good player at 14. And then there's also a great argument for trading back and just saying, the heck with it. All these guys are so close. I'd rather have two of them. Let me two of them. Give me two starters instead of one, because I don't see the superstar there. But as far as trading up, there's something called the JJ chart that you can look up online, and it basically gives the point value for every pick, and it's probably the most accurate thing. Now on draft day, something to keep in mind is the prices go up. So
Right.
if me and you are both trying to trade for somebody, trade up, then all of a sudden we're going to have to offer more. But according to that JJ chart, it would take our second round pick to move up to number like 6, 7, 8, somewhere in that range. So I don't see that happening from a Ravens perspective. But when it gets down to pick 10, and somebody's going to be there at pick 10, pick 11, that's when me personally, I'm as patient as I try to be. If like a Thibodeau or a Charles Cross or a Sauce Gardner by any chance, or even Stingley, who I like a lot, if they start slipping to pick 10, and what we have to do, I don't want to say all we have to do, but if we have to give up a third and maybe a pick next
You have
year,
a few of them.
I'm all about it. And you know what? If you want to recoup those picks because it's a deep draft, you can trade back later and get your picks back and still have a player that's better than where he's going to be drafted. So like in the third round, us taking guys like Ben Cleveland and Brandon Stevens, those type of talents, no knock on them. They're going to be available in the fifth round this year because of COVID. All these players are coming out at once, especially the big guys that, were protecting themselves from COVID. A lot of big guys in this draft. So to answer your question, Rita, I'm like, it's going to be like, it's a great question, but I'm going to have to see who falls.
Yeah. And I think that's like, there's always a guy that falls, right? We know that that's how this goes. There's going to be somebody that we don't feel like should have fell, that fell. And if it's a guy that you feel you believe is an immediate impact player on your team, I think, like you said, a second, I don't think that that's happening, but a third, I definitely can see the possibility, because they have a few third round picks, and they have the opportunity to it's not like they fully lost on that. So yeah, I asked that question because I just feel like, where you are at 14, it's very possible that somebody falls out, and that it's a player that you definitely think is right now, I can put this player in right here, week 1, and they'll be an impact player, and how important that would be to you in order to get that player. Or do you just let it ride? And I agree with you that I think that if it's closer, maybe within 5 spots, I think I'd potentially look into, like, all right, let's see what they're asking for here. So
right.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be patient at the beginning, but I'm telling you, as it creeps closer to 14, I know there's going to be that one guy out there that not only I like, but a lot of people like, and know that this person, because if you look at my top 10, Rita, I'll put it on the screen right now. You can't see it, but I'll edit it in. If you look at my top 10 right now, it's a lot of not only great players, not who only I consider the best players in this draft, but also fit a need. Look at all those edge players. Look at all those corners. The only guy that's not considered a need would be Kyle Hamilton, because we signed Marcus Williams. We have Chuck Clark, Geno Stone, Tony Jefferson. Somebody else I'm missing in there, I apologize to, but we have a stacked safety group. So we don't need a safety, but the need is matching the top players in that top 10. And that's what's making me really itchy, man, really itchy, to where if it gets to like pick 11, 12, I'm going to be on Ken's show. Just like, man, just give up the third.
Yeah.
We have to pick or trade a next year's pick. Do that, because it's not going to cost really much. And this is the deep draft that we're looking for here, the post-COVID draft. So if we got to give up a third or a fourth next year to make it happen, like I'm willing to do that, even though I don't know anything about next year's draft aside from the quarterbacks.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, like you said, Hamilton isn't a guy that you need because you did bring in Marcus Williams. But again, if you feel like this is an impact player, sometimes you got to make it work, right? And figure it out later. And a guy like Stingley, who that you have him as your top 10 as well. But Stingley is a guy that, first of all, we know that the Ravens love quarterbacks. So there's that. And, Stingley is a guy that is a very talented player, coming out of that LSU defense. So, if the Ravens felt like that this is a guy, that could be a great number 3, because at this moment, you don't have the likes of a Jimmy Smith, and you are playing in a AFC that is very, heavy in terms of passing.
Add Tavon and Averett there. Like, we need
Right.
one.
And
You just
other guys that have left. So then you bring those guys in. And so now your secondary looks really good if you add a Humphrey, and then Peters comes back, right? And then you add a Stingley with the other guys that you bring in. So yeah, I mean, I think that if they feel like that this is a player that can absolutely make an impact, I'm okay with them trading up, but not for too much. And I think that's where I'm at with it. No first rounds. We're not doing that. There's nobody in this draft worth a first round pick in any year.
That's right. Especially when you have a quarterback. So we don't have to worry about that here. So a player that I imagine you're familiar with is Kair Elon, right?
Yes,
being a
obviously.
Florida fan. So I would be remiss if I did not ask you. I'm going to give you my little thing on him first, right now. I think that there's a lot to love about him. That's why I have him so high on my board. His movement skills, his height, his weight. I think he could play press corner, even though it was a lot of off coverage at Florida. It's a giant projection from that area, but that's the same as all corner prospects now. Very few of them are asked to man up at the line of scrimmage. The thing that worries me, and I want to get your opinion as someone who's watched them a lot more than I have, is the tackling. And for me, my concern is it's not just he's not good at it. He's got to clean up his technique. But the want to me is something that I haven't seen in the 3 games I watched. So I want to hear it from a Florida fan who obviously likes him. What about the tackling, and what can you tell me about him as a player?
I do like his technique, and I think that Florida's defense is small, particularly up front. I don't know if you noticed that. And sometimes they get manhandled a lot at the line of scrimmage. And so sometimes their secondary, their linebackers and secondary are busy because there's not a lot of penetration can come up front. They were pretty good with run defense, but not pass defense in terms of like getting to the quarterback. So that secondary is pretty busy. Elam, this is the first year that he really had that he really played, I believe, all 12 games. And I think he's a good player. I do think that he has a tackling problem, but I also feel like that was that coaching is a big part of that. Because Todd Grantham was their defensive coordinator. He's not a good defensive coordinator. He was eventually fired from his position. So I think that the scheme didn't benefit his play. And then I think coaching plays a part of that. I think that he definitely can clean that up. I hope he's working hard at that right now. If he is, and he's improved, I think he's a really good asset to someone's football team, because outside of that, I love him as a player. And I kind of don't like saying this because we know that his cousin is Matt Elam, or is that his uncle? I don't remember, but they're related, right? Very closely. And so I try not to speak so highly about him, because I spoke very highly about Matt Elam at Florida, but he was good at Florida. I mean, I watched him play. And so I don't know how that didn't translate to the NFL. I'm not sure. But I think that this kid will be more consistent than his relative in the NFL. Now, as a fan and even the front office, maybe you're a little gun shy because of you already did this and we know how that went. But no, I think that he is a good defensive player. I think that in a better scheme that he had in Florida, he could be an impact player. But I agree with you. His tackling is a little poor, and he could do better with that. Hopefully, he's working on that as we speak, and
Right,
he'd
because
be good to go.
it's something that the Ravens value, and then also Uncle Matt, it was his main downfall. Like if you're going to be a strong safety, you need to be able to cover and tackle. But if you can't tackle, that's kind of a disqualifier for that
Exactly.
position in the box. So it's not as much pressure on Kair to be that kind of a tackler. He's a cornerback, but it's still something that the Ravens value. And personally, I like good tacklers too. You can't let up big plays. That's the difference between winning and losing. So when
I
it's your
agree.
time to tackle, you better get do the dirty work and tackle. But yeah, see, that's the thing with Stingley too, Rita, is that when you're on some kind of roll and the team, like when Stingley was on that championship run and he was banging Chase in practice and you saw all
Yeah.
this stuff, he was in a zone and like really, really focused. And when that focus and it's Jamar Chase's leave and your quarterback's no good, or like you mentioned with Florida, the defensive line was getting pushed around and it starts the downward spiral, you can look worse in that defense than your actually skills are, and you put
Right.
yourself in a good environment with better coaches. So I see the upside with Elam, and I'm glad to get your feedback on like what you thought of him as a, because when you watch somebody, for we get an affinity and a really good feel for these Ravens that we watch for 16, now 17 plus games a year. So yeah, so hearing from Elam about Elam from you is something that I really value. I appreciate that. And
Yeah.
then go ahead.
Anytime. I got a question for you though. I know we keep talking about pass rush, but I think that interior disruption is equally important to me. I can only speak for myself. Um, look at the Aaron Donalds of the world, right? And I don't think there's any Aaron Donalds in the draft, but I feel like potentially I'm higher on a guy like Jordan Davis as opposed to everybody else. So I'm curious to know like where you stand with that, and if he was available in the Ravens we're about to pick, would you be okay with that?
I would be okay with that. I have Davis at number 12 on my board. So, as you mentioned, the unpredictability of the board, if we were at 14 and we did pick, there's probably going to be higher than my number 12 available just because of the nature of things. But if the Ravens like him, if they believe in him, then I'm 100% on board, because what I see is a dominant player and what I see is like a coin flip between whether I've been asking everybody this do you see him as Haloti Ngata, or Avita Vea or Ndamukong Suh? Skeptic Goat was just on here and mentioned Jeffrey Simmons, and I ain't been able to get that out of my head because he's that kind of player too. Or is he more of a Brandon Williams, a Vince Wilfork? Because that matters to me, Rita. If it's the 2-minute drill at the end of an important game, a playoff game, and they're out of timeouts and there's a minute 30 left and we're hanging on to the lead, is your first round pick going to be on the bench because he can't keep up, or is he going to be able to provide that pressure? So huge difference. I will give the Ravens the benefit of the doubt whether they pass on him or jump on him, because I have those questions. And his weight is an issue. I mentioned this before on the show. There's no way he showed up at practice at 340 and the coaches told him you're not big enough. You need to go to 360.
Right.
That's on him as a person. And so the discipline, and no matter how much you lead a horse to water, make him drink type of analogy or whatever, that's on Jordan to be healthy and to be his best. So a guy I would point you to that I like more than most is number 50 on my board, Cam Thomas from San Diego State. Now, if you notice, San Diego State's kind of made a upcoming in their reputation.
We have.
You,
Yes.
you would like this guy a lot, Rita. He plays on the inside. He's kind of big for an outside linebacker, like a McPhee type, just powerful hands and enforces his will on you. So he can play on the inside and give you that interior rush. You're talking about a hard charging person, somebody whose hand usage is very advanced. So he's not the longest guy when it comes to arm length, but you try to put hands on him, he's swatting it away, and he goes upside your head or a club move or something. They feel it. It stuns you. So Cam Thomas is a guy you could see on the board there that I have my 2 stars around as my positional favorite.
Yeah.
I love that guy, man. I love that guy. If you get a chance to watch his highlights or anything, look up Cam Thomas from San Diego State. He'll stand out to you as just a play hard guy, but not only a play hard guy, somebody that's already got advanced skills and that could help the interior pass rush right away. And also like John Paschal, who is at the end, number 69, that last pick. He's a guy that can move around on your defensive line. He can kind of play like the Calais Campbell role. Obviously, Calais is a future Hall of Famer, but he can be a defensive end on early downs and pressure your left tackle, left guard. And then on the passing downs, you can move him inside and he can give you that interior pass rush and really get in the quarterback's face quick. Because I agree with you, Reeta. Interior pressure is more and more important in this quick passing league.
Absolutely. And listen, as much as we love to talk about the pass rush, right? You know, getting the disruption right in the gap in the A, to me, feels just as important. I want to make sure that the quarterback is uncomfortable and that he sees me literally in his, eye view.
In his vision, right.
His vision. And so if I'm disrupting the guys directly in front of him, that helps the outside linebackers and the defensive ends in terms of getting their sacks and their pressures. So we talk so much about pass rush, we do, and that's fine. I'm cool with that, right? I understand the importance of it, but for me, it all has to come together, and that's why I was curious to know how you felt about a guy like Davis. I agree with everything that you said about him. I don't know if his durability is withstanding, and it's great to know that there's other guys that you feel like are potentially better options. I got to do a better job of watching San Diego State games. I really do, because they always have players that come out of that program, and they're solid players. But I just think that that's an important thing that we need to be, discussing. And so, we talk about the trenches, but we always, it seems like, talk about this one part of the trenches and not the whole part of it. And all of it has to come together for it to be successful, in my opinion. So, that's the part. I think that that's something that I'm looking forward to. I would love to have a great pass rusher, but if we don't get one and we get a really good defensive tackle, I'm pretty sure I'm just as satisfied with that,
So my thoughts on this also, Reeta, is that to get interior pressure, it's like obvious to all of us that it's important and it's hard to find. There's only one Aaron Donald, etc.
Correct.
To get one of those guys that you can feel comfortable about providing interior pass rush, you either got to pay up one way or the other through money or your cap or through the draft. So that's why I have Devontae Wyatt, Javis's teammate, right ahead of him there, because that's the quality that he has that translate. Devontae Wyatt is so darn quick that if you put a big man next to him, and the Ravens love their big men like Michael Pierce and so on and so forth, Michael Pierce is still going to command a double team. And what would that do on the Ravens if Devontae Wyatt was next to him? He'd be singled up in them one-on-ones, and he's too quick for one man to block. So I'm a big fan of Devontae Wyatt. That's why I have him right outside the top 10 as players that are not being looked at as top 10 players. But my personal favorite, get that interior pressure when you can. You might not be able to pick a player like this for the next 5 years. Lamar Jackson's your quarterback. You're going to be winning. Harbaugh's playing to win. DaCosta's playing to win. Ozzy's in the building. If you got a chance to get a guy like Devontae Wyatt, you may not get a chance to get him in the draft under team control for quite some time. So that's my philosophy on that, man. I like Devontae Wyatt, and I think he'll play in a system with a Jordan Davis-like player next to him, just like he had at Georgia.
Yeah.
So read off time always flies at the barbecue.
Always.
So I wanted to ask you your final thoughts, anything that you could give us, open floor once again. What are you thinking about strategically? What would you like to have happen? What do you think will happen? The floor is yours, ma'am.
Like I said, we talked about this earlier about this draft just being a lot of solid players, that not a lot of standout players. So I really like for the Ravens to make sure that the guys that they get. I am a trenches person, um, and I would love for them to get as many guys up front to protect Lamar and as many guys up front to disrupt the quarterback. I feel like that this is a good draft for both of those things. And I'm also, this is something too that I think that the Ravens have picked up on from a philosophy perspective. Love to see them continue to try to find wide receivers to develop, because that's how you find one. You got to just keep drafting them, right? That's something the Steelers have always done. And while they haven't always been successful with every guy that they've drafted, I feel like that they've had enough that come out of their drafts that are impact players that help that franchise be who they are. And this is an offensive league, and you do need wide receivers. So it's nice to have Bateman. We don't know what the Hollywood situation is going to look like, right? This is year 4 for him, and it appears right now he's not too happy with the organization. And so this is a nice little group. Prochet is a nice player, and Duvernay is nice guys. But it's nothing wrong with grabbing more guys out of the draft that you think have the potential to develop and become impact players, because a lot of times they do come out of later rounds. So I would like to see them continue to try to hit on some guys in this draft, because the next big player could be in the 4th round of this year's draft. So that is really where I stand. I think that I want I'm trenches for me, and wide receiver. I think you got people that will say running back, and I get it. I understand why, because of the injuries that the running backs have had. But I am running backs, to me, I feel like I hate saying stuff like come a dime a dozen.
It's
But
okay. It's okay. I
kind of how
believe
I
me, Rita.
feel.
I have 3 of them that I think are starters.
Yeah.
And then literally, Rita, I got to tell you, you might see me complaining about this on Twitter. There were like 25 other ones. I'm not even exaggerating this number. And I could barely separate them into like, this guy should be on my board, to where at some point, Rita, you're like, the hell with it. I'll just wait and get a UDFA. You know what I mean?
Honestly, no, really. There's nobody in this draft, honestly, that there are a couple of players. There's a couple guys. Michigan State guy.
Yep. And then Brees Hall from Iowa State.
Yes,
And then
and from Iowa State. Those guys stand out to me. Everybody else is a crapshoot. I don't know who these people are. They weren't good enough for me to care to notice those guys, right?
Right.
And that's where I'm at with it. And that's why I said it's not important, mainly because like you, I feel like you can just get a guy to add to your squad, and hopefully he can find a way onto the roster. He makes himself an impression on the team. There's nobody out here this year that I just feel like is worth drafting.
It may come down to that. It may come down to that. Like I can see it, and we have a ton of picks, and maybe we end up with more, and it's 5th round, and there's a guy that you think is better. And then my argument for drafting one would be, it's going to be hard to recruit one with JK and Gus here. So if you got a guy that is considering other teams, like Philip Lindsay did to us a while back, he's not going to, as much as attractive as the Ravens run game is, play with Lamar, get your yards. It's a running offense. Greg Roman's here. You also have 2 studs in front of you in JK and Gus. So it's going to be interesting to see how we handle the running back position. But I do not want to see one in the first 3 rounds. I could say that. Like, if 4th round, if there's a guy that sticks out, and then of course, Rita, there's different flavors of them. They're not none of them are complete backs aside from those 2 or 3.
Yeah.
Do you want a pass catching back? Do you want a big back? Do you want a guy who can do it all, but maybe is not great at anything, but he can do it all? Do you want a pass protector, 3rd down back, a speed back? There's 100 different ways to slice it. And remember, Justice Hill was on this team before Dobbins was. So, like, who knows what the Ravens actually want as their third running back? Dobbins kind of fell in their lap. So you can't say, oh, they're going to want a Justice Hill guy. Well, Justice Hill was here before Dobbins kind of came in and stole the show. So,
Yeah.
yeah, man, a lot of great thoughts, like a lot of ways you can take it. It's why I'm a draft nerd. Like, it's an art to me, and it's one of those unsolvable mysteries that like keeps getting me coming back to where there's no such thing as being perfect. You can always learn something. You can always learn something from yourself, and then you can always learn something from other players. Like I asked you about Kair Elon. I've been asking players like Skeptic Goat was a Treylon Burks fan. He's had his eye on him for a while. So I wanted to know what Treylon was like when you watch him every week, when you make that a
Right.
priority.
Right.
Because I can't do all that, man. There's no way. I looked at 234 players, and I'm looking at like 2 to 3 games each. And then some guys I dug in further if they had it. But I'm not watching their whole season or what they did last year or any of that. So I admit my ignorance is what I'm getting at. I just do the best I can.
And that's why I say, we appreciate you guys that actually do. I mean, watching 234 players and then watching 3 of their games, that's a lot of football
Yeah.
games that you watch. And it's not an easy thing to do. And unless you're like a paid scout to actually like look out for these guys, like it's so hard it's so many players, it's so many programs, right? Like, so it's not an easy thing to do. And, we appreciate you guys doing that because it allows us to get an insight on what their profiles are, their player profiles. And I
Yeah.
respect you guys way more than the guys that get paid on TV, because I've said for years now that those rankings come from their players,
Yeah.
manager, their agents, and not
Probably.
from a talent perspective. So yeah, I appreciate you guys always, watching out for players and knowing the team, that follow, how that player could potentially fit into their system. So it's really important
Exactly.
for that.
Exactly. Well, man, you're very welcome. I thank you for noticing that. And like, a little bit about my personal situation, but I had an accident and I found a lot of free time on my hands in the middle of the night, which is why we always record here late at night, because I need, it's impossible for you to sleep at night. So I turned that obstacle in my life into a blessing to where I just love the tape. It's kind of relaxing to me, Rita. It's like this, I kind of call it math and art. Like the numbers add up a certain way, but there's also
Okay.
a certain style to it that's just like pleasing, like relaxing to me, I want to say. And then being like, oh, that happened because that happened first. But then
Right.
he saw that. But then, holy crap, this guy messed up. And then he got in his vision, like the certain things you're talking about, catching the quarterback's eyes. It's such a timing league and a math league. And then you got to play outside the system, which is a Lamar fan and a Ravens fan. Why I'm so big on Lamar, he can play outside the X's and O's like nobody's business. So,
Yep.
long story short, what I wanted to say is you're very welcome, and I'm glad that you appreciate it. But it's relaxing to me, and I do it because I love it, not because I get paid for it. I just love football players. I love the game, and I love my family. I love people like you, where I can talk ball with on different levels, whether they're a film study person or they're looking at a big picture. Like
Right.
you're real good at big picture stuff, so I always rely on you for that kind of stuff. So
Yeah. Thank you.
so Rita, now that we've got done complimenting each other, I would like to say thank you to my football family. Thank you. I love my football family, all my friends out there. Thanks so much. The barbecue's been going great, Rita. Like I've had some really good, really cool guests, and I'm so happy for you to join me. So at this time, I would like to ask you to say goodbye to the people, Rita. Bye, football family.
Goodbye. Thanks for having me again.